Welcome to the Interventions Podcast. I have a very special episode for you today. Excuse me, I have a bit of a cold, so I sound a little nasally and all the throat cough thing going on, but we're going to get through it. I'm excited about this episode because I'm here to answer a specific question from one of my followers. She is a follower of my content on Facebook regarding generational curses, which aren't curses at all, generational madness, generational patterns, generational chaos, anything but a curse. Now, we're not going to get into my definition of a generational curse or a generational pattern here, but I definitely want to answer her question and thank her for giving me permission to answer it publicly in case the answer can help someone. Okay. She reached out to me because the content that I post about generational patterns in families rings true with her. But she finds that her own family, and the way she described it, they don't act emotionally healthy towards each other when they're communicating their feelings. And in spite of the fact that she has attempted to kind of rearrange and try some new things in terms of the way they communicate, she said it's really not changing anything. And she herself walks away from these exchanges with a sense of unworthiness. Like it's just like a heavy blanket of feeling not worthy. Okay. And my response to her was, instead of attacking the communications with your family, which is something on the outside of you, I said healing, especially if you're feeling like unworthy, that is an act of healing from the inside out. Right. And she said, okay, I'm going to work on that. But she came back and said, hey, can you give me specific examples of what it meant for you to heal from the inside out? And I'm like, girl, thank you for the question. Let's go after it. Now, I think it's important to talk about my philosophy on healing, because not so much the person who asked me the question, but I noticed that people see healing as an external work sometimes. Like one of my other followers said, how do you heal when your adult children won't return your phone calls? See, my philosophy is healing is a one-man/one-woman job. It is not a team sport, okay? When you're talking about your adult children returning your phone calls, and when you're talking about relationships with other people, you're actually talking about reconciliation, not healing. Because healing is an inside work. It's you literally rewiring yourself, physically and energetically. And what do I mean by that? Literally, your brain, physically, neurons fire off in your brain, right? And thought patterns come from the way those neurons fire and the paths that firing follows in your brain. You're literally going to have to change the paths in your brain of how your thoughts follow those trails. And when I say rewiring physically and energetically is just, how do you show up in the world? Are you a happy person? When people come into your space, do they feel that you are exuding confidence, happiness, joy? Are you peaceful? If you're not that energetically, does it feel a little blue and gray around you? Is it a low energy? Is it almost, you can almost cut it with a knife, that you're not necessarily in a positive, happy, or healthy headspace? You have to rewire that. That's healing. Literally changing the way you think because your brain is not firing the way it used to. And energetically, just to be in your space, it's palpable that something good and something positive is going on with you. That's my philosophy on healing. It's an inside work. Everything else, when you're talking about dealing with your relationships with people, you're talking about reconciliation, and that's a different conversation. So now that it's clear, my answer is not going to be how you reconcile with these members of your family that are having trouble talking about their feelings. I do have to add a footnote about that. If you're experiencing family conflict over feelings, my question is, and since we're not working one-on-one, I couldn't really ask you this question and go into it too deeply. I don't have a lot of details, but my first question would be, what are you guys talking about? Because if you tell me, you're kind of having negative experiences talking about feelings with your family members, I'm going to assume you're not talking about how you feel about your job. You're not talking about how you feel about the TV show you watched yesterday. And I'm also going to assume we're not talking about positive feelings that you have about each other. What are you talking about? You're likely talking about how each of you makes the other person feel, right? That's a critique, a complaint. You may see it as an observation, but people are not going to receive it that way. And what I imagine in my mind is a group of wounded parties talking to each other about their feelings about each other, hoping to be heard. Well, that's not going to go well anyway. There's no way to work on the quote unquote communications when it comes to that. Because the truth is, that's just a conversation you shouldn't be having with each other. Again, it sounds like a bunch of people who need to go have an internal healing and come together later and have conversations about other things. Because the truth is, your feelings are your responsibility. And if in any way someone else feels like you're dumping your feelings onto them and telling them they're the reason you're having these negative feelings, that conversation isn't going to go well anyway. You know who those conversations are for? A clinician. Those conversations are for therapists. They're the ones who help you unpack your feelings. Okay? But I do have a quick fix for you before we move on. The next time you find yourself in one of these conversations where people are sharing feelings, I'm going to say maybe it's one or two of your adult children, and they're telling you how you made them feel. Take a deep breath, okay? And hold space for them. If your family pattern is to get into these conversations and your response is to defend or try to clarify or try to indicate that's not how you meant to make them feel, right? Because that's typically how these things go. I'm just taking it from the textbook. Textbook family conflict. Take your deep breath and hold space instead. Don't defend. Don't even explain. You might want to say, you know what? You have a right to feel that way. I can see why you would feel that way. Or, you know what? There was a time in my life I was going through a lot of pain, and I didn't even notice how my pain was affecting you. And I'm sorry I made you feel that way. Right? You're not taking responsibility for their feelings, but you are taking responsibility for the fact that there could be a way that they didn't have a positive experience of you in the past. And if you can get past that without needing to explain, without needing to defend yourself, without needing to also get your point across about your feelings, in the short term, while you're going through your individual healing process, you can hold space and avoid more of these conflicts over feelings. Okay? So now, getting to the answer to your question, I call healing the journey of a million little things. Because there's no one or two big things, right, that you're going to be able to do to rewire your brain, to cleanse your thoughts about yourself and about the world, to purge the pain and trauma that's even stored in your body. There's no one or two things that you can do. It's literally a journey of a million little things that get you to the place where you suddenly realize you don't think the way you used to. You're not triggered the way you were. Your energy is completely different. You got a little pep in your step. See, the goal of healing on this journey of a million little things is to live with a full tank that you're able to fill on your own, right? Love for self, patience with yourself, grace for yourself, empathy for yourself, all the good stuff. You are capable of filling that tank on your own. And then it gets so full that it simply spills over onto others. You literally become a magnet for good, wholesome, nurturing, positive experiences in your life because you're walking around with a tank that's already full of it, right? Are you walking around 90% of the time overflowing with peace, happiness, and joy that comes from being able to fill your well full of living water? To the woman who asked me the question, imagine coming to the table of those family conversations, standing on that foundation. You're already feeling full of love. You're already full of joy. You're already full of peace. If you came to the table of those conversations that way, you likely wouldn't even be talking about your feelings, right? Because you would have mastered your feelings on your own. You wouldn't feel the need to make them a topic of family conversation. And you would be able to process other people's feelings without feeling conflicted about what they're saying, right? You wouldn't be triggered by what they're saying. because your tank, your well is so full of all of these lovely things that you're unconcerned with how they feel in terms of how it impacts you, right? Imagine giving from that full well, right? No more dry bones. That's my definition of healing, okay? Now, it might sound like a bunch of hoo-ha, but if you have ever tried to be in a relationship, whether it was romantic, a family relationship, a friendship with someone who was empty, their tank was always empty, you know it can be a real quagmire and a lot of work because they haven't tended to their own emotional needs, right? You become their supply of what they haven't matured into giving themselves. It's like someone who is constantly making withdrawals from the relationships. They're not making any deposits, only withdrawals, because they just don't have the emotional fortitude or the emotional resilience. They don't have the mental fortitude. They're just in a place where the tank is always empty. The well is always dry. And if you know what it feels like to be in the presence of someone like that, you have to ask yourself, well, if my well is empty, does it feel like that to be around me? Right? So now, let's answer the question, how did the inside out healing process work in my life? What did it look like for me? And I'm prepared to answer that question, but I have to tell you what got me there. Because for most people, when they start asking that question of healing and what needs to be done, it's because something occurred in their life to tell them, oh man, I gotta heal because I'm not okay with this existence, feeling the way I feel every day. So I'm going to share with you that moment for me. And I'm going to take my time because this is literally the first time I'm speaking about my mother publicly. And I think it's important that I do that at this time because, first of all, thank you to my followers for your transparency in sharing some of your experiences with your family in my comments. I'm energized by that in a way that I'm seeing people reach for healing to the point where they can be transparent and speak their truth about what they're experiencing. I love that. And I spent a long time not speaking about my relationship with my mother publicly because sometimes it almost feels like a betrayal. Because the truth is, if you tell your story, there are places where it's going to intersect with someone else's. And I want to be delicate about how I do that. But if I'm going to sit in this healing space, working with other people, it has to be done. So here we go. I had what I've come to call an unfortunate relationship with my mother. I never really understood why our relationship was the way it was because I considered myself a dutiful daughter, attempting to do what I could to mend that relationship. And my mom was a prolific educator. Like, children loved her. I still see people who are older than I am who said, oh, you're Barbara Bond's daughter. She was my favorite teacher. And don't get it twisted. I have so much respect for how my mother showed up in the community. Like, I will never deny her roses for that. But the truth is, I didn't get to experience that version of her. I never understood. And, I started over the years catching a glimpse of some of the family wounds, maybe secrets, some of the really deep dysfunction that occurred in her birth family. And it kind of helped me understand, maybe just from the tip of the iceberg, because I'm sure it ran deep. But when you're a girl who just wants her mom to love her, that stuff doesn't matter. The history, the why, the patterns, the little girl in you just wants her mom to love her. Okay? So about 15 years ago, my phone rang. I look at the caller ID. It's my mom. Now, the first thing I said was, what is it now? And I was hoping it was something good. I had just stopped dating this guy that she really hated. She had a good reason to hate him. But the little girl in me was excited. Like, I stopped dating this guy. Maybe there's hope, again, that I did enough for her to come around. She was mad at me about him. Maybe she came around. He's gone. I'm good. But that's not what that call was about. She was yelling and cussing at me for something I still, to this day, have no idea what. Because I hadn't done anything. I hadn't said anything to her. I hadn't said anything to anyone else. I was just confused. I mean, at some point, it was just like the Charlie Brown teacher, womp, 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 womp. I stopped even hearing what was going on because it was nothing but confusion. I couldn't get a word in edgewise. I have no idea. And that was kind of typical of our relationship. But this time something different happened. Something came over me like peace. That is the only word I can use to describe it. I didn't feel anxious. I wasn't crying because, she's hurt my feelings so much that as an adult, I've cried a lot. But I simply said, Mom, don't call my house anymore speaking to me this way. Well, her response was typical of our relationship, and she said, oh, don't call your house. Click. One of her favorite things. So I sat on the edge of the bed, and I spoke out loud my intent to heal from that day on. I just, in a moment, I understood the importance of no longer concerning myself with reconciliation, right? I realized this was now a healing job. This was no longer about reconciling with my mother. And I said, I realized this may be the last time I ever talk to my mom. I literally in that moment committed to myself, to giving myself what I realized I wasn't going to get or experience from my mom, which as an adult is my job anyway. Let's be for real. Because many times if we experience some kind of family pain, we become children living in adult bodies, right? The child in us still wants mommy and still wants daddy to show up in a certain way. But the truth is, we're grown-ass adults. We are not supposed to be getting our emotional supply from our parents, and we aren't supposed to be getting our emotional supply from our children. We're supposed to be our own emotional supply. We're supposed to mature mentally and emotionally in such a way that we understand how to exist without an external supply. But it was in that moment, after that one conversation with my mother, that I realized it, almost suddenly and instantaneously. See, healing, it's a true fight for your life to go through an arduous metamorphosis into a version of you that you have never seen before, just like a caterpillar turning into a butterfly. And I will always call it an arduous metamorphosis. I might need to coin that term because that's exactly what healing is. Arduous in that it is tough. You have to push. You have to be committed. And metamorphosis, because it's not just a change. It's not just a little transition. No, baby. It's a complete metamorphosis. And you know a butterfly looks nothing like a caterpillar. That was a major change. That's what healing is inside of you. It's arduous and it's a true metamorphosis. And I'll tell you what, it's also worth every second of it. So now I'm going to be specific and share a sampling of my million little things. Remember I said healing is a journey of a million little things? Here's a sampling of mine. And it can only be a sampling because it's a lot. There are a lot of little things that happen while you're in this process of rewiring your brain, resetting your thoughts, getting the pain and trauma out of your body. So here's a sample. So I started my healing journey where a lot of Christians do who no longer attend church. I was a Christian, but I was no longer actively going to services on Sunday. I started with Christian books and TV programs. And Joyce Meyer was my absolute favorite teacher because she was so deeply transparent about her life and how she fumbled her way through life. I was moved, by the way, not just by how transparent she was, but how she was able to laugh at herself. And because humor is just such an important part of my life, I loved how, in fact, what is it? Enjoying Everyday Life, I think is the name of her program. She's all about, listen, if you're going to walk through what can be hell on earth sometimes, you may as well go ahead and enjoy this walk because you're here. I love that. So she can laugh about her walk, and she does it regularly, including things she may even struggle with now, because aren't we all struggling with something? But what really pulled me in was her story of being sexually abused by her father up until the point she moved out, which I think she was 17 or something. That's a lot of abuse, okay? And her mom knew about it. But what happened was, by the time her parents got old, she actually took care of them in their old age. And she had an opportunity during that time to have conversations with them about her childhood. Deep. To wait all those years to have a conversation, that's incredible. But the thing that really drew me in with her was how she said, I'll never say I'm happy I was molested, but what I'm about to say may sound like that. I know for a fact if I had not gone through that abuse, I would not be the woman I am today. She was basically expressing gratitude for the pain that birthed who she is today. Now, the truth is, I'm going to give a spoiler here. By the end of my journey, I was grateful. And when I say the end of my journey, my healing journey to get here, I have so much gratitude for the relationship I had with my mother, even though if you would ask me at any point in my life, what is the thing that causes you the most pain, without blinking, without hesitation, I will always tell you it was my relationship with my mother. It was the greatest sadness of my life. But I am so grateful because had that not happened, I would not be who I am today. The ability to heal from and to experience redemption and to have real peace now, this is what made me love Joyce Meyer so much. Because I believe that getting to a point of gratitude is a hint that your healing is really setting in. When you can look around at the people and the things and the situations that hurt you and may have even caused you deep trauma like hers, and be able to say, you know what? That stuff made me amazing. Because I love who I am today so much that I wouldn't go back in time and change any of it. Whew, that's healing. So that's number one. I started my healing journey with Christian programs and books. It gave me something that was useful for me as the process went on many years later. But my next move, so I started looking for online groups. I don't know what made me do it. I got on the computer one day and I'm like, you know what? I'm out here on my own. I'm no contact with my mom. There's got to be people online that are also experiencing this and have some thoughts on how they're healing through this walk. So the funny thing is, I found two groups. They both had the same name, by the way. Daughters of Narcissistic Mothers. Now, listen, narcissists are like 2% of the population. But like 90% of y'all say you know a narcissist. So stop it. That term is overused. But I can say, when I entered those groups, I found that their stories of their experiences with their mothers were very similar to mine. So I didn't get stuck on the name of the group, but I was pulled in by the description of their experiences in their families. But I didn't stay long because I noticed something was missing in both groups. There was like a lot of blame and stinking thinking going on. I didn't actually see anybody talking about healing, and nobody was talking about how it impacted their life and what they were doing to turn that around. It really was just a lot of stories about how their moms were just awful villains. And that's not my thing. It's not my thing. Because in spite of the nature of my relationship with my mother, making her a villain didn't serve me or her. Because it's not true. She wasn't a villain. She was a wounded person. Okay? And later on, I'm going to talk about how important it is to humanize the people who've hurt you. Right? She's a human being. She's not a monster. She's not a villain. And guess what? I absolutely loved her. Okay? So my next move, I don't know how this happened, but I found my way to a group that was loaded with metaphysical coaches. And I was connected with Kenda Bell, Kenda. You can find her on Facebook. She's phenomenal, and she is still a personal friend of mine to this day. I absolutely adore Kenda. But this was my first time meeting her. I went to my first coaching session and she said, I'm giving you homework. You have to go stand in the mirror every day, look at yourself dead in the eye. Don't be looking at your feet, right? And say, I love you and I approve of you. I love you and I approve of you. You want to talk about rewiring a brain? Day one, I was surprised just how difficult it was to do that. I was like, wow, why is that so hard? Is it supposed to feel like that? And then day two came and it was a little bit easier. Baby, by the second week, I was having full conversations with myself in the mirror. No, seriously, I was good. I love you. And you know what? I approve of you too. Because girl. And then conversation would take off. I found out through that process, I actually liked me. And it was something that never even occurred to me since I was stuck in the little girl who was trapped inside of me mode. And I was taking all of my cues about my worthiness from my mom. That homework that Kenda gave me was my very first deep experience with feeling not just thinking or knowing, but feeling in my body what it actually meant to love myself. That was a game changer. Because even though healing is a story of a million little things, I'll tell you what, there are some things that are going to happen that the result is almost immediate. Those days that I spent in that mirror, my brain changed the way it saw me and the way I saw having love for myself. Game changer. Shout out, hey, Kenda girl, I know you listening. So now I'm hooked on this healing journey. I'm having this amazing experience with Kenda as my coach, which is why I'm still in one of her coaching groups today. Okay. I have this background from Joyce Meyer, understanding how to enjoy my life and still be transparent and be able to laugh about my shortcomings. So I'm hooked. And then my travels led me to someone named Ala Muhammad, young woman. I believe she's like 28 now. And I'm still in one of her classes, by the way, all these years later. Ala is amazing. She's a natural plant-based healer who also deals in metaphysics, by the way, and quantum physics. She's amazing. She actually gets down to the science of food and how it affects your emotional and your mental state. I mean, I was flabbergasted by what I learned, but I was even more flabbergasted when I went on a 5-month healing cleanse and found out just how much food affected my mental and my emotional state. Another game changer. Because it's true that pain and trauma does get stored in your body. And food frees up your body to actually start purging that stuff out of your flesh. It's insane. And I have a specific example. So the fight or flight response, the stress response, the one that has become a chronic problem in the United States because it's supposed to be a response that you use to run away from a tiger if it's trying to eat you. But the way we live our lives, it's a response that's always turned on, and it's really devastating to our health. But that response actually goes back to being healthy when you stop eating junk. I had an irrational fear of, I'm just giving you one example. I had an irrational fear of crickets. I actually got trapped in a bathroom in my son's high school once because there was a dead cricket near the door and I was scared to walk past it. I'm on my cell phone. I'm calling my son. I'm calling my girl, Lisa. I'm calling people to come get me out of this bathroom. That's how irrational my fear was of crickets. If you know me, you just learned something new about me because most of you don't know that. I had a cricket in my house one time. You know them big black crickets. I went and got a broom and started beating that cricket with that broom. Its leg flew off and everything. I thought I was good. The cricket lurched at me with his one leg. I grabbed my keys and I left my house. Yes, ma'am. I left my house till somebody else came home. Irrational fear of crickets. Now, you know that's an emotional mental state thing. It doesn't make any sense, right? They're harmless. Well, while I was on this cleanse with Ala Muhammad on plant-based foods, but we also couldn't have wheat. We couldn't have corn, no soy, no caffeine, no fermented foods. Like this is some real plant-based, healthy, no sugar, none of that. So I'm in this process and I take my dog to walk outside. I have a little dog. Well, I had a little dog. We're walking outside and there's like a cricket in our path. And I walk up to the cricket and my dog walks up to the cricket. And I notice he almost stepped on it. I say, hey, baby, be careful. Don't step on the cricket. What? By the time I got back, I said, excuse me? Where is my irrational fear of crickets? Yeah, the food that you eat affects your mental and emotional and your stress state. And the reason why I'm even including it in this conversation is sometimes we think we're going to think our way or watch our way or read our way to healing. But there is a mind-body connection. And you cannot ignore the body part, the physical part, which is attached to your food and to your habits. I'm telling you right now, if you're going to go on any healing journey, please include a physical component. It's essential. It's absolutely essential. Now, by this time, there are massive changes going on the inside, and it's really starting to show on the outside. My family is now actively curious about what I'm doing, including my mom, which says a lot. Okay. I'm hearing more about how they experienced me before. Some of it was quite eye-opening, but fair enough, right? And it was also the perfect feedback for me to start growing. Like I started to really be able to dig into blind spots because now I had the emotional and mental state to even hear some of the ways people experienced me before. Because I was literally becoming a safer place for them to open up in conversation with me. Right? That alone was a win. Way back then, that was a win. And truly, that's the foundation of the relationships that we enjoy today. Of course, minus my mom who passed in October of 2022. See, you get unexpected gems when you get committed to this process. You don't even see them coming. My younger son said to me, you know what? You have social anxiety. I'm like, excuse me? What are you talking? You know I love being out here running in these streets with my little social butterfly self. What are you talking about? He said, the average person wouldn't see it. He said, but I see the difference in you from home to when you go out. I see that you have anxiety. And I was like, wait a minute. He might be right. It kind of explained like years of fear and panic attacks that I had. Yes, in my past, I had panic attacks. And I still might have like one a year. That has not 100% completely resolved, but I don't respond to the panic attacks the same way. I understand how to sit, close my eyes, breathe, and I'm good. But the way I responded to panic attacks in the past, because they were happening so often, I've actually been sent to the hospital for panic attacks because I didn't know how to deal with them. But now I might have one a year. And you wouldn't even know it unless I said it to you, because I'll sit there, close my eyes, and deep breathe, and I'm fine. But the fact that my son felt safe enough to share that with me, and I received it, it opened a door for me to heal that. I have zero social anxiety now. But back then, while I was in the healing process, he felt safe enough to say, here's something you also might want to consider while you're healing. And this is what I mean about blind spots. That was a total blind spot for me. I didn't see it, right? And as a side note, imagine what you would learn if you would go ahead and hear from your children without anger, without defending. I believe children, and he wasn't a child at the time, but children are possibly the most powerful mirrors we have as parents. I'm going to take that back. Children are absolutely the most powerful mirrors we have as parents. They know you. They see you. They watch you very, very closely. And if you had the courage or the wherewithal to even hear what they have to say in terms of their feedback of how they observe you and how they experience you, which is two different things. Imagine if you could take that feedback and do something with it. I pray if you have adult children that you have an opportunity to talk to them about how they have experienced you over the years. Because I promise you, if you're on a healing journey, that information is going to be very useful. I promise you that. Now, from that small sampling of the million little things that occurred in my life to get me to where I am today. And remember, you're going to kiss a lot of frogs, okay? It's not a million little useful things. It's a million little maybe useful things. You're going to kiss a lot of frogs and come across a lot of duds like I did with that Daughters of Narcissistic Mothers groups. But I promise you, just keep putting one foot in front of the other. Go ahead and rack up your million things. Because out of that million, 500,000 of them are going to work and you're going to appreciate it. Because at this point in my story that I'm sharing with you, my journey just became nothing but an avalanche of open doors, right? Leading to the next amazing experience, the next new discovery, healing, growth, expansion. Once you commit to it and these things start happening, it's just an avalanche. Now, there are other things that contributed greatly to my rewiring in my mind, in my energy, in my body. First of all, I had to fully cancel the idea of trying to heal myself in a cave. Okay? You have to involve other people. You just have to. Books, online groups, in person, it doesn't matter. See, you're not, just like I wasn't, equipped with the knowledge, the tools, the clarity, and you're just too close, right? You have blind spots. And listen, when the stakes are high, those blind spots get bigger. This is why doctors can't even treat their own family members. They can't even treat themselves. Listen, they need the clarity. They need the expertise of another medical professional that's not so close. And that's true of you too and all of us who are in the healing space. You're going to have to allow the powerful expertise, the powerful experience of others to sow into your life. Just like right now. If you're listening to me right now and you're taking mental notes, you're allowing my experience to sow into your life. Great start. Another thing that greatly contributed to my rewiring is humanizing others. You have to humanize other people, including those who harmed you. Now, I didn't say forgive. We're not going to go there. When I had my mother-daughter healing course, I had a module on forgiveness. That's a completely different topic. I believe in the value of forgiveness, but because it's so controversial, I'm going to leave it out of this discussion, but tell you to humanize others. And what do I mean by that? So when I say this to people, somebody invariably giggles. If your pain, say, is the result of your relationship with your mother like mine was, to humanize her is to say, listen, my mom didn't give birth to me, go through 9 months of carrying me in the first place. And the doctor wrapped me up, put me in her arms, and she looked down with a little sigh. And she looked in my gorgeous little face. I was cute. And she didn't say, you know what? I want to screw this up. Yep, that's what I want to do. I want to be a terrible mother to this baby. Now, you know what? I want to be such a bad mom that I want this baby to have to grow up to heal from being my kid. My mama didn't say that, and your mama didn't say that. Who says that? Your mother was a girl, a daughter, perhaps a sister, a woman, a friend, all of those things before you existed. She was a human being before you existed, complete with human challenges, human frailties, human flaws, human challenges. This is what it means to humanize your mother. See, we tend to see this mother as a thing, sometimes that we put on a pedestal, right? And we sit it there and it's a thing. Your mom's not a thing. She's a human. And you have to humanize her and understand that her failings don't have anything to do with you. Her love for you has to do with you. But any way she failed you along the way has nothing to do with you. It had everything to do with her capacity. Okay? Humanize her. Humanize other people who may have hurt you. You'll begin to see them differently. And while you're at it, let's go to the next thing. You got to humanize yourself, right? Which involves in forgiving yourself for how any of the pain in your life, any of the wounding in your life, any of the trauma in your life conditioned you to operate through pain triggers, conditioned you to not have emotional fortitude, mental strength, whatever it was. Humanize yourself. Don't look at yourself as this robot that should just be able to function from inside of painful places. No, pain causes damage. Humanize yourself and forgive yourself for literally being damaged as you should have been by whatever pain occurred in your life. Okay? Even if that meant you didn't show up as a wonderful, fully whole, healthy parent to your children at some point in their childhood, you're going to have to forgive yourself for that too. You won't be able to heal if you don't. Okay? And another thing that greatly contributed to my rewiring was being okay with the duality of it all. This was important. You know you can love someone and not like them, right? You know you can be harmed by someone and still love them, right? See, those two things can exist at the same time. Don't fight with yourself about this, please. It wastes your time, it wastes your emotional energy, and it definitely slows down your healing. You're allowed to feel what you feel. Listen, observe it. Just observe it. Don't analyze it. Don't contend with it. Don't try to resolve it. If you love someone who harmed you, you just happen to love someone who harmed you. It's not important to resolve that. You just have to resolve what you're going to do about it. But let that feeling be what it is. Let that duality exist. Okay? Because after my journey of a million little things, I can say with 100% conviction, I have living, breathing receipts that I walk in a whole different power today. Whole different. My brain literally doesn't work the way it did 15 years ago. Like literally, like I don't have the same triggers. I don't communicate with the same patterns. I have this peace, like it's happiness, joy. And really, to be honest with you, I never thought those things were available to me at this level. 15, 20 years ago, if you'd asked me if my life would be like that today, baby, I could have never imagined. But it happened because I simply set about my walk with conviction. That's it. There was no formula. It was one foot in front of the other. And that's the only way to experience this level of peace and joy. Committing to putting one foot in front of the other. Because the next step is not revealed to you until you take the step before it. Imagine you're walking in low visibility fog. Well, and it's a winding path because there are no straight lines to healing. You can either stand where you are and keep trying to see through this fog, or you could put one foot in front of the other, the step you can see, because the step after that comes into focus. Okay? That doesn't happen when you take a passive position, sitting in a cave alone with your pain, living somewhere in the lands of hopes and prayers, baby. Because I talk about that land of hopes and prayers. Don't play with me. Time is not your friend. Time does not heal all wounds. Who said that? It absolutely does not. But arduous work, steps of faith, one foot in front of the other, that heals wounds. Listen, grab a book. Find someone who specializes in your situation on YouTube. Join a group or two. Listen, you're going to kiss a lot of frogs. I know I said it. But you're also going to meet a lot of winners. Call a therapist. Like every effort that you take is going to reveal the next step. But if you stand there, you won't see it. It's like the world opens up. And give yourself time for this renewing of your mindset. Okay? Time doesn't heal wounds, but the time you spend putting one foot in front of the other does. Right? Rewiring the way you view the world from whatever kind of pain you're experiencing now, that takes time. Like you're not going to put one foot in front of the other and in 90 days, you're going to be good to go. It's going to take a little longer than that. Okay? So now I'm going to ask my favorite question. What's your next move? All right, to the beauty who reached out to me, inbox me if this answered your question, please. And if it didn't, guess what? I'm willing to chat with you one-on-one. And not a paid coaching session, just me and you one-on-one, no payment necessary. Because I simply adore you for having the courage to reach out to me, to ask your question. And I'm grateful to you for giving me permission to answer it publicly to see if it helps others. All right? So I'll be hitting you in your inbox soon. Okay, y'all. Until next time.